What's up, everyone? Tony from the Cold Case Project, back again. And today, what I want to run with you over is all content shared in these videos is readily available in any Google search. Now, with that said, I take this content, have it rewritten, and upon rewriting it, put it in these videos to spread the word on the thousands and thousands of cold cases of men and women throughout the United States that are just forgotten, and I give this platform to them so their cases and their stories can be told. Now, in addition to that, if you look down below in the description, you're going to see some brand new t-shirt and coffee cup designs I've actually gotten from a couple of my subscribers who have over the years have been giving me some awesome fan art. So with that said, I'm offering a 20% discount code down below if you check that out, and splitting proceeds with them because they are awesome. Been watching me for quite some time, and I definitely think they deserve to be rewarded for some of the work they do on top of being full-time employees also. So once again, if you have any recommendations or any suggestions, comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the video. Like, subscribe. I'm out. Peace.
Before Amy Shure ever vanished without a trace, she was already fading from the lives of those who loved her most. A devoted daughter, a brilliant professional, and later, a mother, Amy was isolated long before she physically disappeared. In this episode of Seriously Strange, we dive into the tragic and mysterious case of Amy Shure. Amy Shure was known for her warmth, her intelligence, and her deep bond with her family. Born and raised in Massachusetts, she was the daughter of a close-knit Jewish family. Amy was outgoing, accomplished, and by all accounts, deeply connected to her parents and siblings. She graduated from Brookline High School and later earned a degree in engineering and hospital maintenance from the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. By the early 1990s, Amy was working in the finance department at Leahy Clinic in Burlington, Massachusetts. It was there she met Robert Desmond, a temp worker. Amy was married at the time to her first husband, Paul Pomerantz. But after meeting Desmond, Amy's life took a drastic and unsettling turn. She divorced her husband in 1990 after just 2 years of marriage and quickly began a relationship with Desmond. But as the romance blossomed, something else began to wilt: Amy's connection to her family. The woman who had once been so close to her loved ones began to withdraw. According to her family, the change was stark. Robert Desmond reportedly harbored open hostility toward them. He would make threatening and harassing phone calls. In one instance, he hurled anti-Semitic slurs during a call, prompting Amy's mother, Marjorie Shure, to seek a restraining order against him in 1994. By the time Amy and Robert married, she had cut off all contact with her family. Desmond reportedly forbade them from attending the wedding, and Amy, under emotional pressure and isolation, complied. Despite the growing distance from her loved ones, Amy kept working at Leahy Clinic. But her co-workers began to notice disturbing signs. Amy would come to work with bruises, scratches, and clumps of hair missing. Her knuckles were often swollen, sometimes to the point that she struggled to type. One day, she arrived wearing a knee brace and using crutches that were clearly meant for a child. When co-workers gently asked about her injuries, Amy would brush them off. She once claimed she'd been thrown from a horse. Other times, she offered no explanation at all. The physical signs were disturbing, but what co-workers overheard was equally troubling. They sometimes heard Amy on the phone, sobbing and pleading with her husband. Though Amy never explicitly disclosed abuse, those around her suspected she was a victim of domestic violence. Staff began leaving flyers for domestic abuse resources in the women's restroom. Some even offered her money to leave Desmond and take her son to safety. But Amy never accepted their help. It was as though she had resigned herself to a life of silent suffering. And then, in October of 2002, Amy vanished. On October 14th, 2002, Amy left work early, saying she wasn't feeling well. She didn't return the next day or the day after. She called in sick both days. Then, on October 17th, her husband Robert Desmond called Leahy Clinic himself and said Amy wouldn't be returning to work. The next day, Desmond contacted Amy's boss again and asked for their email address. He said Amy wanted to send a resignation letter, but was unable to do it herself. Shortly afterward, Amy's boss received an email from Desmond's personal address with an attached resignation letter. It was signed Amy, but the handwriting didn't match. Her employer grew concerned and called police. When officers arrived at the Desmond home, Robert claimed that Amy had left him 4 days earlier on October 18th. He said the split was amicable and that he had dropped her off at the Alewife train station in Cambridge around noon. According to him, that was the last time he ever saw her. Police, finding no immediate evidence of foul play, accepted his story. No missing persons report was filed, and Amy Shure was never seen again. For nearly a year and a half, no one outside of Robert Desmond even knew Amy was gone. Her family, estranged but still deeply concerned, hired private investigator Joel Peavy to track her down. The detective's search led him to Desmond's home, where he discovered Amy was no longer living, but Robert and the couple's young son, Michael, were. Amy's family had never known she had a child. She had kept his existence a secret from them, likely another symptom of her isolation. When the investigator delivered the news that Amy was missing, the family went straight to the police. Finally, in 2004, authorities reopened the case. When questioned again, Desmond repeated the same story. Amy left him voluntarily. But those who knew Amy best didn't believe it, not for a second. Now treating the case as a possible homicide, authorities conducted a more serious investigation. State police and cadaver dogs searched the home Amy once shared with Desmond. They found nothing. Neighbors told investigators that Amy was never seen outside without Robert. Their son wasn't allowed to play with other kids. One neighbor, a nurse, said she smelled what she believed to be burning flesh coming from the Desmond home shortly after Amy's disappearance. Despite these alarming details, no charges were ever brought against Robert Desmond. He maintained that Amy left of her own free will and simply never came back. Her driver's license expired and was never renewed. Her car was never re-registered. Her last paychecks remained unclaimed. In every way, Amy Shure had disappeared completely. In 2007, Amy's family scored a bittersweet legal victory. An appellate court granted them visitation rights to their grandson, Michael. This was groundbreaking. Grandparents in Massachusetts previously had no rights to visitation if they had no prior relationship with the child. But the court's decision came too late. Robert Desmond, having lost the case, moved to California with Michael. Amy's family never got to meet their only grandchild. Both of her parents have since passed away, never knowing what happened to their daughter, and never getting to hold the one person left who still carried her memory. In 2018, inspired by the film 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, Amy's family launched their own billboard campaign in Massachusetts. Their goal was twofold: to revive interest in Amy's case and to reach others who might be suffering in silence as she once did. It's been over 2 decades since Amy Shure was last seen. She would be in her 50s now. If you have any information about the disappearance of Amy Shure, please contact the Billerica Police Department at 978-671-0900. Lincoln, Massachusetts, nestled just 20 miles northwest of Boston, has always been known as a quiet, affluent town with winding roads, colonial homes, and the tranquil charm of New England. But on October 24th, 1961, that tranquility was shattered by a bizarre and chilling mystery, one that has baffled law enforcement and amateur sleuths for over 6 decades. That day, 31-year-old housewife and mother Joan Risch vanished from her home under circumstances so puzzling, they continue to provoke speculation and debate. Was it a kidnapping, a murder, or something far stranger? The morning of October 24th, 1961, began like any other for Joan Risch. She lived at 48 Old Bedford Road with her husband, Martin Risch, and their 2 young children, Lillian, age 4, and David, age 2. Joan had graduated from Wilson College in Pennsylvania and had once worked in publishing in New York City before settling down into suburban life. Martin left that morning around 8 a.m. to catch a flight for a business trip to New York City. Joan, as usual, handled the children, made breakfast, and began tidying the home. By 10 a.m., she had taken David to the neighbor's house and driven Lillian to a dental appointment. She returned home by 11:15 a.m., and the day continued on with nothing outwardly unusual. Joan's neighbor, Barbara Barker, later recalled seeing her around midday. Joan came over to retrieve David around 11:45 a.m. and told Barbara she was planning to bring the children outside later to play. Around 2 p.m., Barbara saw Joan again. Lillian was outside riding a tricycle while Joan gardened. By 2:15 p.m., Joan and the children were back inside. At approximately 2:45 p.m., Lillian returned to Barbara's house. She calmly told Barbara, "Mommy is gone and the kitchen is covered with red paint." Alarmed, Barbara rushed next door. What she found was disturbing. Inside the Risch home, there was no sign of Joan, but there was blood. A trail of it stretched from the kitchen through the house and into the driveway. Blood was smeared across the walls, pooled on the floor, and splattered on the phone's receiver. The phone had been ripped from the wall and thrown into the trash bin. There were more oddities. Joan's purse was still in the house. Her keys were gone, as were some of her undergarments. The children were unharmed. There was no sign of forced entry, no stolen items, and no clear motive. Police were summoned, and soon the quiet neighborhood was swarming with investigators. They quickly concluded that approximately 6 pints of blood had been lost, a significant amount, but not necessarily fatal. Most of it was type O, which matched Joan's. But one bloody palm print on the wall couldn't be positively identified. Was Joan attacked? If so, why wasn't there more evidence of a struggle? Had she left under her own power? But if so, why the blood, the disarray, the signs of an interrupted act? One of the most chilling details was the phone receiver in the trash. Something about it seemed frantic, even desperate, as if Joan had tried to call for help and been stopped. Multiple witnesses later came forward with sightings from the afternoon of October 24th. Around 3:15 p.m., a motorist driving along Route 2A near the Risch home claimed to have seen a disoriented woman walking along the road, covered in blood. She was holding her abdomen and appeared to be in shock. Another witness said they saw a similarly disheveled woman heading into the woods. But these reports were never verified, and no trace of Joan was ever found in the wooded area surrounding Lincoln, despite extensive searches with dogs and volunteers. Other neighbors reported seeing a strange, unfamiliar car parked in the Risch driveway earlier that day, a dirty, possibly blue or gray sedan. Some said it was there before noon. Others recalled it after. The vehicle's identity was never confirmed. Martin Risch returned home that evening to find police officers swarming the scene and his wife gone without a trace. He was quickly ruled out as a suspect. He had a confirmed alibi, no known marital issues with Joan, and was genuinely distraught. As the days turned into weeks and then months, theories multiplied, but few led anywhere. One of the strangest twists in the case came when investigators delved into Joan Risch's background. They discovered that as a child, Joan had experienced trauma that she never spoke of. In 1939, when she was just 9 years old, Joan's parents had died under tragic and possibly violent circumstances. Her mother died in what some reports suggest may have been a suspicious fire, and her father passed shortly afterward. Joan was adopted by relatives and took their last name, Natras, for time. Friends described Joan as intelligent, introverted, and imaginative. She had a lifelong love of books, especially mysteries and true crime. This love of crime novels would prove significant. While combing through Joan's personal life, police visited her local library. They found she had checked out more than 25 books in the months before her disappearance. Nearly all of them focused on missing persons, murders, and disappearances. Several books involved women vanishing under mysterious circumstances and starting new lives elsewhere. One of them even described a woman faking her own death by smearing blood around her house and disappearing. This revelation threw the entire case into a different light. Could Joan have staged the scene? Could the blood, 6 pints of it, have been faked somehow? Could she have cut herself or used pig's blood, as some speculated? But that theory raised further questions. How could a woman escape with no one noticing? And why abandon her children, whom she loved deeply? Martin Risch dismissed the idea. He insisted Joan would never have left willingly, never have hurt herself or disappeared by choice. And yet, the books seem to tell a story, not of spontaneity, but of planning. Over the decades, the disappearance of Joan Risch has become one of New England's most enduring mysteries. Several prominent theories have emerged. 1. Murder or abduction gone wrong. The most straightforward theory is that Joan was the victim of an intruder. The phone was ripped out, there was blood, and she vanished without her car. But there were no signs of forced entry, no known enemies, and no motive. If it was a murder, where was the body? 2. Staged disappearance. The library books, the trauma in her past, and the oddly theatrical blood evidence have led some to believe Joan staged her disappearance to start a new life. But how? She had no known contacts, no financial means, and no car. Why abandon her children? 3. Mental breakdown. Some psychologists have theorized that Joan, perhaps triggered by something, memories of her traumatic childhood, postpartum depression, or a combination, suffered a psychotic break. She may have injured herself and wandered off in a dissociative state. But no body was ever found, and if she'd wandered far, surely someone would have seen her. 4. Abortion gone wrong. A more controversial theory is that Joan had sought an illegal abortion, which in 1961 was both criminalized and dangerous. Perhaps the procedure went wrong, and her disappearance was an effort by someone to cover up the death. But there is no concrete evidence of this, only speculation. 5. Suicide. Though her body was never found, some have suggested that Joan may have taken her own life in the woods near her home after some mental break. But why leave so many ambiguous clues? And again, why no body? Despite exhaustive investigations, thousands of man-hours, and numerous tips over the decades, Joan Risch's case remains cold. No remains have ever been found. No one has come forward with credible information. Martin Risch never remarried and raised their children alone until his death in 2009. He maintained until the end that Joan did not leave willingly. In 2002, the Massachusetts State Police officially reopened the case. But despite new technology, DNA testing, and fresh interviews, no breakthrough came. The home at 48 Old Bedford Road still stands, a quiet, unassuming colonial in a town where time seems to move slowly. But for those who know the story, it remains a house of unanswered questions, of shadows lingering in bright daylight. Perhaps the most haunting detail is the kitchen calendar found in the Risch home. On October 24th, the date of Joan's disappearance, a single note was written in small, neat handwriting, Joan. No one knows what it meant. Was it a note to herself? A signal? A goodbye? Or perhaps it was nothing at all. In the end, Joan Carolyn Risch left behind more questions than answers. A mother vanished, a life erased, and a mystery that has resisted resolution for more than 6 decades. The winter of 1988 should have been a time of celebration for Michelle Marie Ashley Nicola. Christmas decorations filled the small Holyoke, Massachusetts apartment she shared with her common-law husband Michael Nicolo and their 2 young children. But by early December, something had gone terribly wrong. The Christmas tree remained standing with presents still wrapped beneath it, the refrigerator stocked with food, and children's clothes neatly folded in drawers. The only things missing were Michelle, Michael, and their children. Michelle's mother Rose first grew concerned when she called the apartment on December 5th, 1988. Michael answered the phone and casually explained that Michelle had left after an argument but would surely return. As days turned into weeks with no word from her daughter, Rose's worry deepened. She repeatedly called the apartment, but no one ever answered. When she visited in person, she found the home abandoned but strangely intact, as if its occupants had simply walked away midlife. On January 12, 1989, Rose filed an official missing persons report with the Holyoke Police Department, beginning an investigation that would span decades. The 22-year-old Michelle had grown up in the Connecticut River Valley area, described by those who knew her as a spirited tomboy. Her life took a dramatic turn in 1986, when, at just 19 years old, she met and married 36-year-old Michael Nicolo in Charlottesville, Virginia. This was Michael's second marriage, and from the beginning, friends and family noticed disturbing changes in Michelle's personality. The once vibrant young woman became withdrawn and anxious, her spirit seemingly crushed under Michael's controlling behavior. Those close to the couple reported that Michael exerted extreme control over every aspect of Michelle's life. He allegedly forbade her from wearing makeup or shaving and wouldn't even allow her to shower without supervision. His jealousy and paranoia created an atmosphere of constant tension in their home. In August 1988, Michelle had briefly left Michael, taking their children with her. But Michael tracked them down and convinced her to return. That November, Michelle made a chilling confession to her mother, Rose. "If I'm ever missing, he killed me. Find the kids." These words would haunt the family in the coming months. In the weeks following Michelle's disappearance, Michael's behavior grew increasingly suspicious. He first surfaced at his stepmother's home in Virginia with the children, but no Michelle, claiming she had run off with druggies. Around the same time, he borrowed a friend's car in Charlottesville under questionable circumstances and never returned it. The vehicle was later spotted at a holiday and parking lot before disappearing completely. By 1992, Michael was seen in Florida living out of a car with the children, telling different stories about Michelle's whereabouts to different people, sometimes claiming she was dead, other times insisting she had run off with a Cuban drug dealer. Michael's troubled past provided disturbing context for these events. Born in 1949, he had served as a decorated helicopter pilot in Vietnam, earning 2 Purple Hearts and 2 Silver Stars. But his military record was marred by a 1971 incident where he and 7 crewmen were charged with gunning down 21 Vietnamese civilians from their helicopter. Though the charges were eventually dropped, this violence seemed to foreshadow his later behavior. His criminal history included a 1981 arrest for parental kidnapping of his daughter from his first marriage, 1984 obscenity charges related to his sex shop business, and a 1997 arson charge for burning a neighbor's car after a dispute between their children. The case gained new attention in 2001 when private investigator Lynn Marie Carty tracked Michael to Florida. Their phone conversation revealed his shifting stories about Michelle, first denying knowing her, then admitting their relationship while denying they were married, and finally claiming she had run off with a Colombian drug dealer. Immediately after this call, Michael fled Florida, demonstrating behavior consistent with guilt. Michael's violent tendencies reached their horrifying conclusion in December 2005. That November, during an argument with his wife Aileen, he ordered their son Nicholas to run her over with their Jeep. Then, on New Year's Eve, Michael shot and killed Aileen and her adult daughter in their Florida home before turning the gun on himself during a police standoff. Today, Michelle's fate remains unknown. Her son Nicholas died of a drug overdose in 2017 at age 29, while her daughter Joy was eventually reunited with Michelle's family. Investigators continue to consider Michael a suspect, not only in Michelle's disappearance, but also in the unsolved Connecticut River Valley killings. The Holyoke Police Department keeps the case open, still hoping to bring closure to Michelle's family. At the time of her disappearance, Michelle was a 22-year-old white female, 5 feet 2 inches tall and 120 pounds, with sandy brown hair and brown eyes. She was last seen wearing blue jeans and white sneakers. If alive today, she would be 57 years old. Anyone with information about Michelle Marie Ashley Nicola's disappearance is urged to contact the Holyoke Police Department at 322-6940 or the Massachusetts State Police at 1-800-322-2129. The answers to this decades-old mystery may still be out there, waiting to bring peace to a family that has waited too long for the truth. The last day of school at Woburn High in October 1989 should have been cause for celebration, especially for 14-year-old Melanie Melson. Smart, striking, and spirited, Melanie had been looking forward to the long weekend ahead. It was Friday, October 27th, and unbeknownst to anyone, it would be the last time she was seen alive. Melanie Melson was the youngest of 5 children in a close-knit but complicated family. Her parents had divorced years earlier, and her home life was described as turbulent. She often shuffled between relatives' homes, including her grandmother's, where she was living at the time of her disappearance. Though just 14 years old, Melanie often hung out with older teens. She was street smart and confident, not afraid to speak her mind. Some described her as precocious, while others said she was trying to grow up too fast. But despite these characteristics, Melanie was still a child, a girl who loved writing in her diary, dreaming of becoming a model, and worrying about boys and makeup. At school, Melanie struggled academically, but was socially well-liked. Friends said she was loyal and fun, the kind of girl who could light up a room. But in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, she had been skipping school and staying out late. Her family was concerned, especially her grandmother, but no one suspected just how fragile Melanie's world had become. On the night of October 27th, 1989, Melanie told her grandmother she was going to a party in a neighboring town, but that wasn't entirely true. She had actually made plans to attend a small, informal gathering of older teens in the wooded area behind an industrial park near the New England Resins and Pigments Company in Woburn, a spot known to local teens as a place to drink and hang out without adult interference. Melanie was the only girl at the gathering that night. She was joined by 5 boys, all older than her, ranging in age from 16 to 19. Some of them were her classmates or acquaintances. Others she knew only loosely from around town. Alcohol and marijuana were reportedly being used that night, though it's unclear how much Melanie partook. At some point between 10 p.m. and midnight, the group began to disperse. Melanie was last seen walking into the woods with 2 of the boys. According to one of them, they left her alone after she said she was going to meet someone and find a ride home. That was the last confirmed sighting of Melanie Melson. She was never seen again. The next morning, Melanie's grandmother realized she hadn't come home. Calls were made to friends and relatives, but no one had seen her. Melanie had vanished without a trace. By Sunday, October 29th, a formal missing persons report was filed with the Woburn Police Department. Initially, some officers assumed Melanie was a runaway. After all, she had a reputation for being rebellious. But as hours turned into days, and then into weeks with no word from her, that theory lost traction. Woburn police quickly focused their attention on the boys who had been with Melanie that night. Their stories were inconsistent. Some said she had walked off alone. Others claimed she had gotten into a car with an unknown person. One boy even stated he had fallen asleep and had no idea what happened after 11:30 p.m. Police searched the woods extensively using dogs and helicopters, but came up empty. No clothing, no personal belongings, no signs of a struggle, just the haunting silence of the trees. As with many small-town disappearances, rumors spread quickly. Some speculated that Melanie had overdosed and the boys panicked, hiding her body to avoid getting in trouble. Others whispered about a possible sexual assault gone wrong, or an unplanned pregnancy that someone wanted to make go away. Several people reported hearing a scream that night from the direction of the woods, but nothing ever came of those leads. Over time, friends of the boys began telling police different versions of events. One boy reportedly confided in a friend that Melanie would never be found. Another said he thought she had been buried somewhere in the woods, but didn't know where. Yet despite these disturbing whispers, no arrests were made, and no one was formally charged in connection to Melanie's disappearance. Some of Melanie's personal items, including her diary and school books, were later found at her grandmother's house, untouched. There was no indication she had packed or planned to leave town. For Melanie's family, the worst pain was not knowing. Every time a body was found in the region, they braced themselves. Every false lead twisted the knife deeper. Her mother, who moved to Florida after the disappearance, remained vocal for years about her belief that Melanie was murdered and buried somewhere in Woburn. In the 1990s, the case went cold. Occasionally, police would re-interview suspects or revisit leads, but no substantial progress was made. Melanie's family continued to search on their own, often organizing searches of the woods using volunteers and cadaver dogs. By 2009, on the 20th anniversary of her disappearance, Woburn police brought in a new generation of detectives and employed updated technology. Private investigator Tom Shamshak, a former police chief and national expert on missing persons, was brought in to review the case. He believed Melanie never left the woods that night and was likely murdered and buried nearby. Using advanced ground-penetrating radar and forensic dogs, investigators returned to the area behind New England residence. Several areas of interest were identified, but still, no remains were found. Shamshak later stated publicly that he believed Melanie's case could still be solved, and that someone within the original group knew exactly what happened to her. In the early 2010s, a former acquaintance of one of the boys at the party came forward with a startling claim that one of the individuals present had made a chilling confession years earlier. According to the source, the confessor had said something like, "It was an accident. We didn't mean to kill her. We buried her so no one would know." Police looked into the lead, but without a body or corroborating evidence, it remained another frustrating dead end. Another source claimed Melanie's body had been placed in a construction site that was later paved over. That lead was investigated, too, but the site had since become part of an industrial complex, and the cost and logistics of excavating it were prohibitive. Despite their best efforts, detectives found themselves tangled in the same web of half-truths, secrets, and silence that had plagued the case for years. In 2020, authorities in Massachusetts began redigitizing old cold cases. Melanie's was one of them. DNA samples from her family were resubmitted into national databases. Investigators hoped that, if her remains were ever found or if a piece of evidence surfaced with viable DNA, they'd be able to make a match. Her case was added to Name Us, and profiles on sites like the Charlie Project helped bring attention back to her story. Online sleuths on platforms like Web Sleuths began dissecting the case again, comparing it to other disappearances in the area. In 2023, an age progression image of Melanie was released, showing what she might look like at age 48. The photo reignited public interest and led to a handful of tips, but nothing definitive. Still, detectives have said they believe someone, likely more than one person, knows the truth about what happened to Melanie that night. More than 3 decades have passed since Melanie Melson vanished in the woods of Woburn, Massachusetts. Her name is still etched in the hearts of those who knew her, and etched into the long list of America's unsolved disappearances. Her family has never stopped searching for answers. Her mother, who once held on a hope that Melanie might return, now only wants to bring her home and give her a proper burial. The last image of Melanie is a snapshot of a teenage girl caught between childhood and adulthood, standing on the edge of something dangerous and unknowable. What happened in those dark woods on that October night remains one of Massachusetts' most enduring and heartbreaking mysteries. Someone out there knows the truth. And until that truth comes out, Melanie's story will remain unfinished.